Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Today's video is going to be all about my step 1 studying experience. I wrote it back in early June and I wanted to make this video because the exam is a beast and I want to share the resources that I liked as well as tell you about the mistakes that I made so that you can avoid it if you're studying for the exam. I got my notes, I got some water, I'll put some timestamps on the screen of different parts of the video and let's just jump right on into it. So first off, what even is step 1? Well, this is the first part of a 3-part examination series which medical students or graduates need to take if they want to train or practice in the United States. The exam itself is an 8-hour testing session filled with 7 60-minute question blocks. The types of questions that show up are generally related to the foundational sciences, and I'll put a screenshot on the screen of the systems that are typically covered. Most students write the exam in the summer between their 2nd and 3rd year because this is when there tends to be a switch from foundational to more clinical sciences. And so while the content is still fresh from all the didactic learning you do in the first 2 years, that's typically when people opt to write it. I'm actually studying in Canada right now, so it's not a mandatory requirement for us to write it. And I always get questions like, Allie, are you moving to the States? Like, why did you write it? As of right now, I have no plans to move to the States. I'm writing it because I want to keep the door open for myself. I don't know what I want to do, what I want to specialize in, and who knows, maybe in the future I might want to do some training or like a fellowship in the States. I think that would be cool. I have no plans right now of going there for residency, so nothing within the next couple of years. But if I had to study and balance my clinical duties at the same time as a resident, I feel like that would be a huge barrier to me writing the exam and pursuing these types of opportunities. There are a lot of people out there who do that, and I'm like, major respect and props to you because that is so difficult. And I had the time now, so I was like, okay, let's do it now. If I never use it in the future, that's fine, but if I do need it, I have it under my belt already. As for my overall studying journey, I started thinking about writing it in January, February-ish, and I really tried to study for it concurrently with school, but I just found that it didn't really work for me at all. My school doesn't do the block curriculum where you learn by different systems, and instead we do a spiral where basically the systems can switch every week, and I found that it was really hard to match the studying of that alongside step 1 content. So by the time that I started my dedicated block, I only really went through like cardiac and GI stuff. One of the mistakes that I made during this time was trying to focus too much on the details. I feel like I tried to learn everything like super in depth, but it would just take me a long time to get through one system, clearly. That did not work, and I knew that if I wanted to write the exam before I started clerkship, I would have to switch things up. My dedicated period this year was in May, and I really reviewed the majority of the content during this period. Resources that I loved for content review were Pathoma, Sketchy Micro, Dirty Medicine, USMLE Biochem, Randy Neal for Biostats, and Osmosis / other YouTube for pharmacology. Quick note, because I know people are going to ask me why I didn't use first aid, and I gave it a try in the beginning, but I just felt like it wasn't really working that well for me. A, I didn't recall anything, and B, my knowledge gap was significantly large enough that I found that half the stuff they're presenting to me I didn't know about, and I feel like I need more context to learn and actually truly understand something. Looking back now, I think it'd be a good like reference resource for things that you've already learned if you just want to go back and see like high yield points. But personally, I don't think it's that great of a place to start off with if you're trying to build that foundational knowledge from scratch. What I ended up doing for the majority of my review was going through Pathoma. Pathoma is a textbook that specializes like in pathophysiology, but I found that in order to understand the pathophysiology, a lot of the times he went over the physiology as well. So it's a great concise way to get like the high yield concepts that you needed to know for each system, like packaged nicely for you. I've heard of people using other things like bootcamp. Based on my quick Reddit research, it seemed like it was very comprehensive, and honestly I needed something that would just like hit the high yield facts, and I felt like Pathoma was perfect for it. I personally would highly recommend. I really loved using that as a resource. The only problem is that it's not comprehensive, right? So stuff that wasn't covered include biochemistry, microbiology, and pharmacology, as well as biostats. For microbiology, I loved Sketchy Micro. At first when I tried it, I was like, this is not that helpful. Like, why am I just memorizing straight facts? Like, I don't think this will be of much use. But then you realize that you just have to memorize those facts. And in fact, their little sketches are a great way for you to memorize those different points. So I tried it, didn't really like it, but then I went back to it and then I ended up watching all of the microbiology videos. And the reason why I really like it and would recommend is because I feel like all the content that I saw in the practice questions as well as on the exam itself, I could answer because I watched these videos. Obviously, they're not comprehensive of all microbiology, but I feel like they hit a lot of the main points that you need to know at this stage. And so it's a great way to get those easy marks on the exam. For biochemistry, this is one of my weak points, and I just accepted the fact that I wasn't gonna know everything and I was just gonna hit the high yield stuff. So Dirty Medicine has this great biochemistry playlist on YouTube, and I pretty much just went through his videos there and remembered like the key points that he said. I think it's great to have like a general idea of the different mechanisms and pathways, but I only really focused on memorizing the high yield stuff that was highlighted because otherwise it was just like too much. And then for biostats, Randy Neal, as I mentioned, he's great. I only watched 2 of his videos. They were like summaries of the things that you needed to know for step 1. So I worked the problems along with him in his videos, and I found that that pretty much covered everything that I had to know. Pharmacology was the one that was a bit tricky because it's also not one of my strengths, but I didn't find that there was any one singular comprehensive resource for that. If you know one, please feel free to comment it down below to share with others, but I didn't really know where to turn to for this. So instead, I opted to just study the high yield systems. I had some limited pharmacology knowledge that I remembered back in the first 2 years of studying, which I feel like generally carried me over for a lot of like the lower yield systems, but there were some stuff that did pop up more often than others. And so the medications that I think are the most important to know include the cardiovascular drugs, the renal drugs, diabetes medications, autonomics, mechanisms of action of antibiotic classes, as well as psychiatric medications. How I figured this out was like a mix of trial and error with UWorld problem sets as well as with Reddit. Reddit was actually my best friend during this time. I feel like whenever I was like, do I really need to know this or can I just skip? I went to Reddit to search it up, and people were very helpful at telling you what's high yield and what's not. So I used that as a way to guide where I was spending more of my time. I did try Sketchy Farm, but I feel like that was too in-depth and the videos were too long for me to go through. I did go through a few of them, but overall I didn't find it to be nearly as helpful as it was for microbiology. You guys also know that I love my Anki cards, and one resource that I haven't really talked about yet is Anki. I use version 11 for my studying, and you can find that for free linked somewhere on Reddit. Basically, it's a very comprehensive deck of cards of like everything you need to know pretty much for the exam. I didn't really use it as heavily though because I had a really short time frame of a month, which wasn't really enough to like reap the long-term benefits of doing the cards. I only did cards for Pathoma chapters 1 to 3, again because Reddit said it was high yield, Sketchy Micro, or else I literally wouldn't remember anything, and then like some select systems. Definitely for step 2, I'm going to be using his deck. I think they're great. If you're in your first year or second year, I would definitely recommend getting your hands on it and using that as a study resource. I feel like it's so much better than making your own cards, which is what I did for the first 2 years. It's a really comprehensive deck. It's got everything you need to know, and it's great. And the last set of resources are practice questions. So I used UWorld, and I did between 40 to 80 questions a day. I did this at the same time as I was reviewing the Pathoma systems, and every day that I would learn a new system, I would add that to my question blocks for that day. One mistake that I made earlier on was waiting until I knew a system really well before I started doing the practice problems. I mean, that strategy works, but I feel like it takes a lot of time. And by introducing the concepts that you've just learned earlier on, it helps with continued repetition, seeing the things multiple times, and that way there's less of a chance that you'll forget about what you've just learned later on. I should have started UWorld earlier, and I didn't get through as much of it as I wanted to. So if you want to hear that, like, I probably only got through 20% and I still passed. So if you're freaking out that you're not done in UWorld, that's fine. My average was also like a 60%. So yeah, so just know it's not like an accurate predictor of whether or not you're gonna pass. The things that I did use to assess if I was ready or not to write were the Free 120 and NMBE Form 31. I found the style of those questions was really similar to what I got on the actual exam. The only difference was I think my exam actually had longer question stems. than the practice ones did. I don't remember what I got on the free 120, but for the Form 31, I scored in the mid 60s. I know people say you should wait until you start scoring in the 70s before you write the exam, but honestly, I was running out of time and I really wanted to write it before I started clerkship. So I took that mid 60 and I was like, let's just do it. Something else that I feel like isn't really talked about is like the emotional aspect of writing the exam. The exam is so comprehensive, it's a beast, and I feel like for the majority of my study period, I just felt overwhelmed. I felt like I never was gonna be able to know enough to do the exam. And that was another reason why I just wanted to get it over with so I could stop thinking about it. The day before test day, I went on Reddit, of course, and searched up exam day tips. And the things that I took away from that were go to the bathroom at every break, even if you don't need to. Bring a lot of snacks for your break times. And the beginning like instruction/tutorial section is the same as the one for free 120. So if on test day you just like skip through the tutorial, you get an extra 10 to 15 minutes for your break. Exam day went pretty well. There was one section in particular where I was like, I'm gonna run out of time, and usually I'm not a person that struggles with time, but for this one, for some reason, I was like hustling until the very last second. But what I just told myself was that each section was weighed equally. I just went to the bathroom, took some deep breaths, had a snack, and then tried to like calm and clear my mind before moving forward with the next section. Okay, I think that's everything that I wanted to say. I've been sitting here yapping to my camera for like an hour now, but the take-home message that I want to leave you with is if you're studying for the exam, I know that you're feeling stressed and overwhelmed, and I was in your shoes just like a few months ago. Just make a plan. Trust the process. You're making progress every day, even if you don't feel like it, and you're more than capable of overcoming this. Good luck with all your studying, as well as with the rest of medical school and residency. And to everyone, thank you so much for watching today's video. I really hope you enjoyed. If you did, make sure to give it a like and subscribe down below. You can also comment any questions that you have down below, and I'll try to find links for the resources that I've used and put them in the description as well. So yeah, see you in the next vlog. Bye.